Oh, now it's recording. Okay. Yes, hello, and welcome everyone to today's webinar on student resistance and NATO militarization on campus. It's an honor to be moderating this important event today. My name is Hakan. I'm from the Student Coalition of Berlin, and I'm very happy to be joined here by wonderful comrades and speakers from Germany, the UK, Amsterdam, and Italy. And yes, welcome you all. I'm very glad you all are here. As the NATO Counter Summit approaches, our message is clear. The leaders of this war alliance, so-called NATO, do not have a free pass. Resistance is growing and will be waiting for you. And we, the students, non-students, we the people, are an active part of that resistance. Yes, I'm grateful that you are here today. Please also feel free to share in the comments where you are joining from. And if you are in a part of some kind of student group, a collective, or a network, that would be also appreciated if you share that with us. So let us use the space to connect and strengthen each other. So yes, as you have noticed, our headline today is Schools Under Fire. What is this fire? Well, the fire is obviously militarization and the normalization of it. How that fire started and where it burns today, and what we can do to actually extinguish it. That's what we are here to explore today. And but before we dive in, I'm just gonna quickly read out our points of unity, which basically reflect the shared foundation of our resistance. So I'm just going to read it out quickly. Yes, the first of our points of unity is that we oppose NATO as a US-led military alliance, responsible for imperialist wars, military occupation, environmental destruction, and the displacement of millions. We oppose NATO's expansionism and the militarization of Africa, Asia, Latin America, and Europe, and the European Union's complicity in serving US geopolitical and economic interests. We reject NATO's security strategies of counterterrorism, mass surveillance, and attack on civil liberties, as well as its role in deepening inter-imperialist conflict. We oppose NATO's enabling the rise of far-right authoritarian governments in Europe, which use militarization and fear-driven narrative to erode civil liberties, suppress dissent, and undermine democratic rights. The fifth one, we oppose NATO's collaboration with non-member states through partnership programs such as the Mediterranean Dialogue, the Partnership for Peace, Istanbul Cooperation Initiative, and other frameworks that include governments such as the Zionist government of Israel, with records of systematic violence, human rights abuses, and genocide. We oppose NATO's push for ever-increasing military spending, which prioritizes the war economy over social services and compels European governments to deepen austerity measures, undermining public healthcare, education, housing, pension, and the welfare of the working class across the region. 7. We support the right of peoples and nations to self-determination and sovereignty, the exercise of their fundamental rights and freedoms, and their right to resistance against imperialist aggression. We support a just peace through resolving the root cause of armed conflicts, allocating resources, not to the war industry, but to serve and provide for people's needs. And the last one, we support people's struggles to assert their democratic rights in the face of increasing attacks on freedom, political rights, and social justice imposed by militarized and authoritarian policies. So, if these principles resonate with you, we would like to invite you to join the NATO Counter Summit, which will take place next week. We'll have the People's Summit in Amsterdam on the 21st of June, and right after that, the protest action in Den Haag. The registration is there on a QR code. You can scan it now, make a picture now, but we will share the link at the end of our slides and on the website, on the Instagram channel as well. With that being said, I'm going to now introduce our today's agenda. We will first give a brief introduction into today's topic, including historical insights into student movements and NATO's role in militarization education, basically the students at the front lines then and now. After that, a comrade from Germany will explain the case of German academic complicity and the violations of their civil clause. Our comrades from Italy will give a teacher's and students' perspective on how NATO propaganda enters classrooms and have been in the past. Our Amsterdam comrades will explain or like talk more about the encampments and repression in Amsterdam and the massive police violence that we have witnessed. And at last, our UK comrades will talk about the politics of investment and divestment, of how universities explicitly play a role in colonialism and militarism. With that being said, I would like to now start with the students at the front lines. In recent years, we have witnessed a dramatic escalation in military spending across NATO states, especially in Germany. With the so-called special fund of 100 billion, Germany passed one of the largest military investments packages since the Second World War. On top of that, the regular defense budget keeps rising with every NATO state, with the explicit goal of meeting and exceeding NATO's 2% spending target. So what was once a ceiling basically has now become a baseline. Germany was like a year ago less than 2%. Now they're reaching 5%. This is the goal that they are trying to get. Alarmingly, at the same time, though, even many leftist parties and groups are beginning to adopt right-wing narratives. Instead of taking a clear stand against militarization and oppression, they justify arms builds in the name of responsibility and support Israel's apartheid policies under the guise of state reason. In doing so, they betray fundamental emancipational values and actively legitimize war politics and colonial violence. But this militarization doesn't just happen somewhere far away. It happens in the heart of our society. It happens in our schools and universities. This is where it starts. This is also where a big part of the funding will also go into. Educational institutions, once imagined as space of critical thinking, peace, and democratic development, are now becoming channels for militaristic ideology, NATO youth programs, military-funded research, dual-use technologies, defense sector partnerships. The war logic is creeping into every layer of academia. And historically, the students have always been at the front line of resistance. During the Vietnam War, hundreds of thousands of young people around the world took to the streets, especially in the US.
Ich mache Wäsche.
That's okay. Exactly. During the Vietnam War, hundreds of thousands of young people around the world took to the streets, especially in the US and Europe. They occupied lecture halls, blocked military imperialist war strategies of their governments. Despite massive repression, including surveillance, arrests, and even deadly violence like the 1970 Kent State massacre, students succeeded in shifting public debate and played a crucial role in undermining public support for the war. Today, we see the same tactics, but with a new target. Today, history kind of repeats itself. Across NATO and EU countries, students who speak out against war and oppression, especially those who stand in solidarity with the Palestinian people, are being criminalized and silenced. Educational events are cancelled under false claims of bias or anti-Semitism, even when they are fact-based and rooted in international law. Teach-ins are banned and campmates are violently evicted, which we will see during the presentation later on as well. Universities that once championed critical thinking are now calling the police on their own students. In Berlin, Vienna, and Paris, peaceful campus protests have been met with arrests and repression. Medics are detained, journalists are beaten, students are smeared in the media as extremists, or even terrorists, simply for demanding an end to the suffering and to the genocide. These are not isolated events. They follow a familiar script. The same tactics were used to crush the student dissent during the Vietnam War and the anti-apartheid movement and the global protests against the Iraq invasion. Many of those young people who were expelled, beaten, or surveilled. But they didn't stop. And years later, many of their demands, an end to war, sanctions on apartheid states, the withdrawal of troops were realized. So history kind of teaches us one thing: student voices cannot be permanently silenced. Every attempt to suppress them only amplifies the demand for justice. The resistance we see today on our campuses is not a fringe phenomenon. It's a part of a long, proud tradition of student struggle from the 1968 till today. And we will continue until the bombs stop, until the universities are decolonized, until the war machines are dismantled. And with that being said, I want to give in, sorry. And with that being said, I would like to give it to our German speaker who will talk more about the German complicity and their hypocrisy. So I welcome Cinderella.
Hi guys, thank you. Very grateful for the possibility to speak here today. My name is Sindala. I'm organized in a student collective not now named TU in Technical University in Berlin. And today I want to reflect on the role of German academia in the war, militarization, and violation of human rights. And first, let's take a closer look at the history and see if German universities actually have learned something from its past. So the German academia in the Nazi time. When the Nazis took power in 1933, they launched a large-scale military buildup, publicly claiming it was for defensive purposes. But after the start of World War II, most scientists were drawn into military service or war-related research. The German universities quickly adopted both Nazi laws and ideology, as, for example, the law against the overcrowding of German schools and universities in 1933, which restricted the access to education for Jews and women. By 1938, 25% of all faculties were members of the National Socialist German Lecture Association, or Nationalsozialistische Deutsche Dozentenbund, who monitored faculties for political loyalty and enforced ideological training. So universities also introduced the mandatory Nazi education programs, including those led by actual Nazi officials. The universities not just indoctrinated students, but also were central to Nazi military and racial research. For example, the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute for Anthropology in Berlin-Dahlem provided scientific assessments used to classify people. And as we know, this classification often led to mass sterilization, deportation, and execution. Researchers at the Kaiser Wilhelm Society also conducted experiments on brain tissue from victims of Hitler's racial hygiene program, which killed over 200,000 people. They also collected blood and anatomical samples from concentration camp victims, often directly through the contact to concentration camps, due contacts to the medics, for example. So one of the most horrific cases occurred at University of Strasbourg. So in 1943, 86 Jewish prisoners were murdered in a gas chamber for a planned skeleton collection by anatomy professor August Hirt. The victims' remains were later found in university buildings. So that's just horrific, right? And my university, I'm currently studying in the Technical University of Berlin, also experienced transformations. Like in 1938, the university established the Wehrtechnische Fakultät 5 with an aim to become a kind of leading institution for military technology in the whole Nazi Germany. That same year, Rector Ernst Storm expelled the last 20 Jewish students from the TU Berlin, just one day after receiving orders from the Ministry of Education. TU Berlin also contributed directly to the Nazi war effort through weapons research, especially one of the V2 rockets, which were later used to bomb London and Antwerp. And likewise, the Technical University of Munich and the Ludwig Maximilian University in Munich aligned with Nazi ideology. The curricula were revised to reflect National Socialist values, and both universities supported racial and eugenic research. At Ludwig Maximilian University, the student resistance group White Rose emerged in 1942. They were trying to raise awareness on campus, distributing the leaflets, anti-Nazi leaflets. And afterwards, its members were arrested and executed following a tip-off from a university staff member, actually. So this marked a very tragic case of direct institutional complicity in the Nazi repressions. So after the defeat of Nazi Germany, the Allies outlined the 4 Ds, which were denazification, democratization, decentralization, and demilitarization. And since universities have been playing a key role in Nazi ideology and warfare, the education system needed to be rebuilt on democratic values. So when the Technical University of Berlin resumed its activities in 1946, it avoided publicly calling itself reopening, trying to distance itself from its Nazi legacy. And crucially, it adopted the Germany First civil clause, which is formal commitment the university is doing for peaceful research and peaceful science, banning military research. This clause was reaffirmed in 1991 and explicitly rejected military funding as well. Second clause followed in 1956 at the Karlsruhe Nuclear Center, ensuring peaceful nuclear use. So today, over 70 German universities have the civil clause, but those commitments are more than fragile. So for example, in last year, 2024, Bavaria passed a law encouraging more military university cooperations, which is explicitly rejecting the civil clause and like the existence and the sense of it. And even with this commitment, the universities are not always conducting just peaceful research. And so today in Germany, we have like the academic research is shaped by these 3 sectors. They are fully military institutions, civilian institutions, and those who operate in between. On the military side, we have Universität der Bundeswehr München und Helmut Schmidt Universität Hamburg. Those are fully military institutions run by the Bundeswehr, German military, and closely tied to NATO, also to research programs. They also collaborate with civilian universities, kind of blurring these lines between civilian and military knowledge production. Then there are civilian universities, many of which claim to be committed to a peaceful science. Formally, it's happening through the civil clause. Yet in practice, even these institutions are often drawn to dual use or military research through partnerships or through external fundings. Somewhere in between, there are things like Fraunhofer Society, which is the Germans, not just Germans, Europe's largest applied research organization with 76 institutes across Germany. Fraunhofer is not a university itself, but it collaborates with a lot of them, sharing staff, joint projects, and infrastructure. It openly conducts military research, so not bound by civil clause, and it's funded by the German Defense Ministry, NATO, and the European Defense Fund. It works directly with weapon manufacturers like Rheinmetall and Airbus. So through these connections, Fraunhofer functions as a gateway, kind of, so allowing military research to enter the academia, often bypassing the civil clause many universities have adopted. It contributes to thousands of military and dual-use technologies, including AI for warfare, drones, cyber defense, radar, and many more. A central driver behind this is the European Defense Fund, or EDF, which provides 7.3 billion in funding, and specifically for military research, 2.7 billion euros. Much of this money flows into projects where civilian and military boundaries are deliberately blurred. There's also the EU Horizon program, worth 80 billion under Horizon 2020 and 93 billion under Horizon Europe, which was first designed for research and innovation, but from the very beginning, it's been a tool for merging the civilian and the military agendas. So we know, as for example, since 2013, the EU has pushed for dual-use exploitation, linking civilian research with defense projects, like through the European Defense Agency, for example. So many universities with civil clause even still participate in projects under labels like border security or AI for security, which are not openly labeled military, but they still have this dual-use potential. And here you can see the list of institutions who are carrying out dual-use research. That is according to a report from Horizon 2020. And that's by far not all. There are like 20 more pages of these institutions, but just on the first page, we can already see the clear example of hypocrisy, because we see there's like this Technische Universität Darmstadt, right? And TU Darmstadt actually does have a civil clause, and even defines the dual-use research, saying they do not do that. But yeah, they still do, as a lot of many universities also do. And by the way, the first non-EU country with the most collaborations with this Horizon program is Israel. And that's what we're going to talk about now. So ironically, the universities who used to be most affiliated with the Nazi back then, today are the most active partners of Israeli institutions. As, for example, we talked previously about the Kaiser Wilhelm Society. It now has a name, Max Planck Society, which is also very much supportive and invests a lot into these cooperations with Israel. There are Technical University of Munich, Technical University of Berlin, LMU, and many more. So as we see in a lot of reports, as just to name one, report of Academic for Justice examines the connections between the Munich universities like TUM and LMU and the heavily militarized universities in Israel like Technion, Tel Aviv, and Weizmann. Yeah, but what is actually a problem with those? Let's talk about that. So the Technion University is a central pillar of Israel's military-industrial complex. It partners closely with arms manufacturers like Rafael and Elbit Systems, Israel Aerospace Industries, and also runs a joint research center with Elbit. It trains engineers for the Israel Defense Forces, EDF, offers master programs to IDF officers and even runs student competitions, which are judged by army officials, like awarding things like war game simulations, for example. Technio also develops military tech as dragonfly drones, acoustic weapons used for psychological warfare, remote control D9 bulldozers used to demolish the homes of the Palestinian people. It is also complicit in constructing illegal separation wall in the occupied West Bank, and that's just like a very, very tiny part of the huge list. I can name the crimes all day long. So the Tel Aviv University also collaborates with firms like Extend, whose drones are deployed in Gaza, partners with aerospace industry and Elbit. It houses the Institute for National Security Studies, which is responsible for consulting both Israeli army and Israeli government, and also responsible for developing the Dahya doctrine, a very well-known doctrine advocating for disproportional military force, especially in the dense populated civilian areas. And multiple student groups also provided extensive research about the partnerships between their universities and the Zionist institutions, as for example, in case of Technical University of Berlin, which is cooperating with all the same institutions as named before, plus Ben Gurion and Hebrew University of Jerusalem. So the Ben Gurion University is also complicit for collaborating with Elbit, Rafale Advanced System, and even the elite unit of Israeli military called Unit 8200, which in partnership with BGU developed AI systems like Lavender and Gospel, which we also all know, and which are basically killing tool responsible for many, many civilian deaths. And the Hebrew University is maybe the most interesting one because it's actually breaching the international law directly, because it has a campus which is located on the illegally occupied territory of Palestine, which is directly violating the international law and violating countless UN resolutions. And the fun fact is, if you are TU Berlin students like me, you can just basically easily go to this illegally occupied land and take course in exchange programs like for archaeology, which is completely insane. And you can take a closer look into the reports if you want to. You can just make a screenshot if you want. But there is a map for academic complicity showing it way more extensively. So you kind of just need to click on one of the universities and you see all the corporations, not just with Zionist entity, but also many other ones. So, and what is the reality in Gaza while these universities are showing the hypocrisy? So the brutal occupation continues. And since early March, Israel has blocked humanitarian aid from entering Gaza, deliberately engineering for mass starvation. People are being shot while trying to reach food at Israeli-controlled distribution points. Gaza is in a state of famine, collapse, and death. And it is not a natural disaster, that is a policy of annihilation. And it is our duty as human beings to speak out about it and to do everything in our power to stop this catastrophe. It's also duty of our so-called peaceful and democratic universities, by the way, to stand against that, but they don't. They stay silent. So demands to cut ties with militarized Zionist institutions and to condemn the targeted destruction of Palestinian education and the killing of members of Palestinian academia, which UN experts are calling scholasticide, are being ignored by our institutions. So we, along with collectives across the whole country, have called on our universities to respect international law and human rights and to end these partnerships with these bloody machines, and to confront the colonial and racist complicity. But instead, they turn away. Their silence is not neutrality, their silence is betrayal. They offer no real response and no action. Some universities pretend to be in a dialogue with us without taking any actions about the genocide happening right now. Others immediately frame students as anti-Semitic and biased and escalate repressions even more. This despite studies have shown that the leftist university-educated people are the least anti-Semitic demographic group in Germany. So German academia is also complicit in silencing political expression. Instead of defending academic freedom, it suppresses those demanding that university uphold its ethical standards, condemn genocide, and stop funding the Zionist war machine. A clear case of this cancellation or silencing is a cancellation of a planned event, a planned lecture by UN Special Rapporteur Francesca Albanese at Free University Berlin, which is funny because it's not free at all at the moment. Yeah, but we know that we are a part of a big struggle and a long struggle. And we are inspired by those who came before us as students who rose up against war and injustice during the Vietnam War era. And we are strengthened by the global solidarity today. And the German students are still standing with Palestine, and they continue to act from the first days of the genocide until this very much moment. We refuse to be silent. And we also condemn our universities for staying silent. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sindela. That was a great insight into the history and current hypocrisy of German academia. I would now give it over to our comrades from Italy, Alessandra and her students. They will give their experience and their propaganda in schools. Alessandra, I welcome you.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. My name is Alessandra. I'm grassroots trade unionist. I'm part of GWAN, Global Women for Peace Against NATO, and United Against NATO. And I am also a member of the Observatory Against the Militarization of Schools and Universities. In a world that meets the logic of neoliberalism and militarism, war needs to be prepared not only on the field, but also ideologically. War needs to be made thinkable, acceptable. It needs to dwell in people's minds. Here's where education becomes pivotal. Students must be taught since a very young age that war is necessary and inevitable. In Italy, which is, as you know, is scattered with NATO bases thanks to its historical alliance with the US, although it would be more appropriate to talk about subalternity, and its strategic geographical position in the Mediterranean, the process of militarization of education has undergone an acceleration over the last 15 years. Although the first formal agreements between the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Defense date back to the early 2000s. With the 2014's Memorandum of Understanding between the two ministries, the concept of culture of defense officially enters the world of education, thus paving the way for countless projects entrusted to the armed forces and concerning almost all school subjects. Next slide, please. Okay, thanks. So, if up to then it was quite normal to see representatives of the armed forces come to school to talk about the most disparate topics, from cyberbullying to surprise, gender violence, to drugs and alcohol abuse, always from a crime punishment perspective, of course, and never investigating the real causes of young people's problems in the least, because that would be the task of psychologists, sociologists, or anthropologists, the field of intervention begins to expand. For the little ones, as you can see in this picture, visits to barracks and military bases, complete with flag raising and singing of the national anthem with the hand on the heart. Scenes where kids from the primary school wearing bulletproof vests and helmets watch how to disassemble and assemble a weapon are episodes that are now the order of the day, with the satisfaction of many teachers who want to convey the feeling that the armed forces must be a point of reference to their pupils, a safe haven for their own safety, and requests for help in case of danger. Next slide, please. Okay. As for the middle school, in Italy, attended by pupils aged 11 to 13, the so-called military dynamic gymnastics is very popular. It is a type of gymnastics, I quote, that emphasizes free body training and the use of functional movements inspired by military activities. Next slide, please. It's the one with the quotation from the Minister of Defense. Okay, doesn't matter.
I would ask Jeet maybe to restart the slides because the pictures don't go through. Maybe to like restart.
Okay, that one.
Donc,
The
peut-être que
one.
tu devrais reprendre parce que les images ne défilent pas.
Just a recap of everything.
Okay, here. In 2022, the Minister of Defense, Guido Crosetto, founded the Committee for the Development and Enhancement of Defense, which developed the Communication Plan, a very substantial document whose purpose is to, as you can read, promote the process of general diffusion and sharing of the culture of defense through knowledge, awareness, and support of citizens for the activities of the armed forces, both those carried
Promouvoir le
out
processus
within the
général de
national
diffusion et
territory
de
and
partage de
those
la
carried
culture de
out in
défense au travers de
support
la
of the
connaissance,
international
de la
Promouvoir
sensibilisation
le
et du
procès de la
soutien
diffusion
du
et de
soutien
la
envers
culture
les
de la
citoyens pour
défense
les
à travers
activités des armes,
la
des forces
connaissance,
armées.
pour supporter
Donc,
les citoyens, pour le support des citoyens sur les forces de l'armée. C'est pour souligner la présence constante de l'armée dans toutes les affaires. Pour montrer le
Again, this is another very appreciated occasion to make the pupils and the student familiarize with the army world. Next slide, please. In high school in Italy, where internships at companies and various career guidance activities are compulsory, most of the projects are now managed by the armed forces and the army. And so, boys and girls of 16 or 17 are hosted on aircraft carriers, or combat helicopters, or are accompanied on visits to companies in the war industry. These companies are often, I must say, connected to the big Leonardo company, which is the second biggest weapon manufacturer in Europe and the 14th in the world. And it is based here in Turin, where I'm talking from. So they are accompanied on visits to companies in the war industry, where they are explained how useful and important it is to build what are actually real war machines, but presented as systems for civilian use. It is the concept, of course, of dual use, which the military industry exploits to attract young people to this field of work. Next slide, please. Next one again. Another one. Next one. Okay. This one. But a further step forward has been taken, somehow bringing to the surface the real purpose of all this ideological brainwashing. With the multiplication of wars and the arms race, the doors of our schools are being opened to members of the army who come to propose the military as a possible career after the fifth year of high school, providing various options. If the young person does not want to continue his studies at university, there are the guided paths for enlistment, which explain how to enlist. If instead a student wants to continue studying, but the costs of university fees are too high or the selective paths too strict, there are the careers in uniform, where through enlistment, the students are given the possibility of continuing their studies within the army to become, for example, nurses, doctors, or engineers in the military academies. An evident example of this is the increasingly frequent visits to high schools by what you are seeing here, the Association of the Italian Career Counselors, called Assorienta, which is closely intertwined with the military world. The military career is always presented as the possibility of making oneself useful in the civilian field and entering the various military bodies that deal with the environment, first aid, or even humanitarian missions, such as the transport of civilians from war zones to our hospitals or the transport of organs. About environmental issues, for instance, we have to remember that the national body of the Forest Ranger was absorbed by the Carabinieri, a body of the armed forces, in 2016. Of course, one of the most seductive arguments is that of the salary that is received practically immediately as soon as the public competitive exam is passed. The interesting thing is that in this presentation, the word war is never mentioned in reference to the commitment in the army, thus operating a real war-washing action on the minds of the students. Yet, a few months ago, the Chief of Staff of the Italian Army, General Masiello, openly declared to newspapers that Italy needs to reinforce its military reserve. It is necessary to recruit, he said, at least from 40,000 to 50,000 new soldiers. Of course, the privileged pool to draw from are, it goes without saying, our schools. But the profession of the soldier is not a profession like any other. You go to war either to kill or to be killed. And it is the precise duty of us teachers, first of all, to tear away the ideological veil that wants to make our children believe that war is necessary to defend ourselves. I, myself, often ask my students a simple question. Who do you think we must defend ourselves from? It is from here, in my opinion, that a pedagogical discourse aimed at deconstructing an enemy whose existence allows and justifies everything must begin. And from here, open the way to teaching the value of dialogue as the only resolution of conflicts. Next slide, please. Here. Fortunately, many students are becoming aware of the rampant militarization of their schools and are mobilizing in favor of a free school where peace is professed and people work and study to build critical thinking. The authoritarian grip on students and on the freedom of teaching for teachers is increasingly strong. An example of this is the confidential circular, and I stress confidential, sent by the regional school office of the Rome region to all school principals. The circulars, the notice, the circular, is from 2023 with regard to the Holocaust Remembrance Day on January the 27th. So only after 4 months since the 7th of October. In this notice, the ministry invited, I quote, "In light of international crisis scenarios, it is recommended to pay maximum attention to prevent initiatives or behaviors that could disturb the serenity of students as well as the regular performance of teaching activities." It is just incredible how these soft words are used to hide a very aggressive attitude towards teachers, a true and complete censorship about the genocide in Palestine. Next slide, please. But all of this must and can be stopped. Students, teachers, and families must unite and use all the possible tools to oppose this militaristic drift in our schools. We, as Observatory Against the Militarization of Schools and University, with the support of grassroots trade unions and various associations, have compiled a handbook which contains facsimiles of injunctions, minority options, and other tools to be used by teachers, students, and families to oppose and stop the projects promoted by the armed forces and the army. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that insight on how the Italian state early on tries to doctrine the kids, the children in the schools early on, and how they try to pretend even to help them financially if they are in need. Thank you very much for these insights. I did not know these. I would now welcome our comrades from Amsterdam. They will talk about police violence and the current ongoing encampments. So I welcome.
Akan, sorry, I think it's Leonardo's.
Okay, Leonardo's gonna talk?
Yeah.
Okay, we still have the student perspective from an Italian student on the NATO propaganda as well. The slides came up, so I was a bit worried. Leonardo?
Yes, can you hear me? Sorry.
Yes, we can. You're welcome.
Hello, everyone. Greetings from my organization, Cambiare Rota, and the high school students of OSA. We think that this debate today captures the central contradictions of our time. I think Israel's recent attack on Iran brings us closer to the World War III, confirming Israel's role as a terrorist state backed by NATO, the US, and the European Union also. I would like to approach the discussion from what Hakan said in the introduction. Where did the fire start? On April the 4th this year, we organized a nationwide student strike in Italy, supported by the workers' strike, uniting different demands from education funding and workers' rights to solidarity with Palestine and also opposition to the European Union militarization. And day by day, these struggles in Italy seem more and more connected to one another. I'll talk about what's happening in Italian schools and university, but we believe that everything we are discussing is a matter of international relevance, common processes, common transformations. At our last conference, we argued that capitalism structurally weaponizes knowledge. It prioritizes research for industrial exploitation and also suppresses critical thought. We discussed the thesis based on the definition of ideological state apparatus, because we think that higher education and research are both economically strategic assets, progressively integrated into the value chains from a European or global perspective, but also strongholds of ideological reproduction. This is done primarily through the selection of knowledge and research products that are advanced and so are useful for industrial exploitation, but also through the development of a consciousness and a knowledge that are subordinate to the acceptance of the existing situation. I think Alessandra was explaining this in a very good way. On the contrary, the development of critical consciousness is strongly opposed. Dissident teachers, for example, who face marginalization and blackmail also know this very well. This concept also applies to school. As Alessandra was explaining, schools have also undergone a profound transformation. They are enforcing class segregation. Most students are funneled into exploited labor, while only a minority is groomed as the future warmonger ruling class. Programs like the Italian School to Work Alternating that Alessandra was explaining, where 3 students also have died while working in industries, normalize school as an exploitation training camp and are also becoming instruments of militarization. We think that this is the core of the European integration with respect to education and research. So not only the role of NATO, which of course is a main contradiction, but also the imperialist European Union project. And the novelty of the last period is that this process is expressed as a part of the dynamic tending towards war and rearmament in the whole West and the European Union. The current ministers of education and university are accelerating European Union restructuring. So we're talking about rearmament, factory conversions for war production, and the push for nuclear power also are a call to arms for school and university. And at the same time, they strip young people of critical thinking tools to resist this shift. Students are forced to school programs in police barracks, NATO bases. I won't say anything more because Alessandra already explained this. Also, in the last weeks, a new Italian security law has expanded protection for intelligence services, which increasingly surveil universities and research centers. So this complements the repression we face: criminal complaints, suspensions from attendance to school and university, and also an attempt to completely purge politics from schools entirely. And the Italian defense minister Crosetto, the same Alessandra was talking about, he warned universities of foreign interference from China, Russia, Iran on research, but also, but we think the real threat in this situation is the European Union's own militarization. The worst example of this tendency for us students is maybe the Politecnico of Turin, the northern Italy, that has publicly applauded the European rearmament plan because they said the funding it will provide will allow new research to be done. We think that the mobilizations for Palestine and the academic boycott have contributed to uncover a reality that was pre-existing. Today, university and research must put on their helmets because war and the strengthening of the military industry represent the only hope for Western capitalism to emerge from a systemic crisis. It's not only a matter of immoral cooperation agreements with Israel that were mentioned before from my colleagues from around Europe, but also a complete integration between universities and war industries. Universities are now like research and development hubs for the military industrial complex. And I think, as Maya Win's Tower of Ivory and Steel shows, Israel's model, where academia and the military merge completely and every form of dissent is banned, this model is spreading globally. Seizing these elements, we, as Cambiare Rotta, decided to be at the center of the mobilization for Palestine solidarity, actually pitching our tents in campuses even before the student intifada spread around the world and carrying on the mobilization for months. I and another comrade of mine were chained up and on hunger strike in April 2023 in front of the rectory of Sapienza University of Rome. And we achieved victories in many cities that, although not sufficient, gave strength to the movement and national dimension to the movement. In particular, protests forced wins in cities like Torino, Bari, and Pisa, blocking ties with Israel, ousting the rector of the Bari University, who was tied to the arms giant Leonardo, and opening also the governance, the university governance, to scrutiny and to public judging. At one point, even Leonardo, the war giant, admitted publicly it couldn't safely lobby campuses and suspended its meetings, public meetings in universities and schools, because it was made clear by the protests that the military industrial complex was not welcome inside universities, inside campuses. This proves, in our opinion, the strength of a mobilization that has to be kept alive in different forms, because we are in a sort of different situation from last year, and we have to be capable of tackling the main contradictions of this time. I think from September onwards, we will continue the battle for the academic boycott. Alessandra is one of the lecturers and students that are preparing with us a draft of a completely new law regulating relations between universities, foreign countries, and the military industry. But above all, we will continue the battle of the students and the entire academic world against Israel, against rearmament, and against war. The various actors in the world of education can and must strengthen dialogue and exchange, and in a context in which European Union unmasks itself as an sort of autonomous imperialist bloc, the debate at the international level, as we're doing today, must continue and be able to combat both NATO as an international alliance, but also United States and the European Union itself. We will also demonstrate in Rome on June the 21st, before the NATO summit, against the European rearmament plan and against the war. In the city of Rome, two demonstrations will be held, and one of them will unfortunately be in favor of European communitarian defense, while ours, promoted with many political and social forces, trade unions, also will stand against any hypothesis of militarization. We think we must attack European Union schools and universities. We must demand that the 800 billion euros promised by Ursula von der Leyen go to education, attack the idea itself of research subordinate to the rearmament goal, attack the complicity not only with the genocide undergoing in Palestine, but with the barbarities that the capitalist West promotes throughout the world, and everything Israel is doing, escalating the war in the whole scenario. I hope we can carry on this discussion in future occasions, and again, greetings from my organization. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you very much for that input. And yes, we will keep going on that discussion even during the summit and hopefully afterwards as well. I would now ask the slide manager to go to yes. Thank you very much. And I would now welcome the Amsterdam students.
Yes, hello, my name is Paul. I'm a student activist from Amsterdam who has been involved in the pro-Palestine movement on our campuses and also more broadly in Amsterdam. I will not be showing my face today, unfortunately, for privacy reasons. I hope you understand. And I'll be talking about police violence in general and also the student encampments in Amsterdam. With that, the next slide, please. So First off, I will be talking a lot also about my personal experiences today, and the stuff that I experienced. This is not really a whole account of everything that has been happening since the Al-Aqsa flood operation on the 7th of October. The pro-Palestine movement has organized all kinds of mm, protests, demonstrations, sit-ins, really on a weekly basis. You can I'll show later. You can go to our Instagram, and we have a timeline of all of the stuff that we did. It's really too much to talk about here. But especially the things that got the most media attention are, of course, the encampments, which we still have one encampment going on right now. I will talk about that at the end. After a lot of protests, peaceful protests at the university, and no real sign from our board at the university to really give us anything in the negotiations. I think they didn't even have enter negotiations up to the first encampment. The first encampment was set up May 6th, 2024, on our campus, on the Roches Island campus in Amsterdam. And initially we planned on being peaceful, but once it was announced that we could not stay overnight on campus, barricades were erected to defend ourselves. We also had an incident where we were attacked by a group of Zionists who threw fireworks at the protest at the encampment, and they pulled up with an Israeli flag, and when that was ripped from them and burned, the media portrayed, this is us being violent, basically the attack on the encampment was from Zionists was framed as us being violent. And no, you can stay on the first slide for now. Yeah. The first encampment in the first evening was at, I think, 4 a.m. Was very violently evicted by police. Bulldozers were brought in. A lot of comrades got beaten really, really badly. The next day there was a big protest in support of the encampment on the Roches Island campus, which then moved to the city center to another university building, which was then occupied as well. That occupation stayed overnight, of one night, and I joined the next morning, and we were also at the same day in the afternoon, after once again negotiations were stalled. It's basically the experience we've had all the time with our university. When we enter into negotiations, they really give us very, very tacit, very low, very few commitments, and commitments that are really would take a lot of time to implement. So we really don't get any strict deadlines. In anything. So the second encampment of Oderman's Hausport a day later was also barricades were bulldozed. There were people on the barricades while they were bulldozed, which is really, really dangerous. For that eviction, the Dutch state brought in SWAT forces, basically, like the parts of the police, not even just riot police, but police that are usually trained to confront organized crime, armed groups. And so when the building that we were occupying was stormed, they stormed in with guns drawn, and really cleared out the house as though we were actual terrorists with bombs, which was a very crazy experience, and also left a lot of people really done and traumatized. Then after that encampment, stayed one night, was evicted, that followed. Then following that was another big protest on the Rogers Island campus again, which is probably the biggest protest we've had so far. And at this, we probably had like, I don't know, I'm bad at estimating crowds, but like at least 1,000 students and staff on campus declaring their solidarity. And yeah, that protest, following the protest, also, well, another temporary occupation kind of, well, emerged. Yeah, I will admit personally, it was a bit disorganized, and we've also had, well, sometimes we've been struggling as a student movement with, well, groups of protesters that kind of, well, work on their own and don't really, well, follow a broader plan. But yeah, that's a bit of a different topic. I don't want to go too much into that. So yeah, this brings me to the next slide, which this is not exactly related to the universities, but there's also, because like the student movement, the pro-Palestine student movement here is obviously bigger than, like, we are first and foremost active at our universities to get our universities to cut the ties. But we are, of course, also active in the broader pro-Palestine movement. And I don't know if you heard about our mayor called them, the Amsterdam mayor called them the pogroms in Amsterdam. When yeah, the Maccabi Tel Aviv fans came and, well, really, they tore down Palestinian flags and attacked people all throughout the city. And when that violence was met with yeah, equal violence by people, Amsterdam people from the city who were, yeah, defending their city, this was declared as an anti-Semitic pogrom against Jews, which it really wasn't. And yeah, following that, our mayor put out a, well, complete ban on protests. And well, in reaction to that, we, the Palestine movement, pro-Palestine movement here, organized, well, a protest against the bans of on the protests on the Dam Square, a central location in Amsterdam. And yeah, this, I mean, it was clear, of course, that the protest was disallowed, and the police came. We were surrounded, and we were told that, well, yeah, it's illegal to be here. You will be taken away. Just comply, and you will not. Well, we will not have to beat you. And yeah, people did comply. We were all put into buses. We were told that we would be taken to one place in the city, which this is a tactic that they often use, that they will, yeah, just displace the protesters. Basically, you get put into buses and just dropped off somewhere outside of the city, from where you have, like, it's a 30-minute foot walk to the next like train station or whatsoever. And so you're temporarily outside of the city and really can't, well, yeah, make a fuss, be an annoyance to our state. And so, yeah, that evening they took us a lot further than they initially told us. They took us to a very remote industrial area, where there's really no people around, there's no journalists around. We were dropped off without any clear communication of where we are. Of course, like, we were at a protest, so like, some of us didn't have phones on us, and we didn't have, well, we were completely defenseless. And after like 5 to 10 minutes, and a group of like 10 riot vans showed up, and riot police just jumped out and started screaming at us and chasing us down the street in this completely, like, remote industrial area, where we were not doing anything. And it was really, we were like, chased like dogs, and screamed at, for no apparent reason. And yeah, I mean, there's a video. Before we play that, I will warn you, like, there's are depictions of police violence. It's going to be like 1 minute and 30. If you don't like that, maybe look away. And I don't know if we have sound, but it's a bit nicer without sound, I'll admit. So yeah. Yeah, so there you see also the buses in the background that we were transported in. And yeah, the frame rates is a bit off, but yeah, you can see these really peaceful protesters, and there's really no justification, even from like a liberal point of view, for any of this. Yeah, you can see there she's being picked up and they're being pushed away, and while they walk, they get beaten into their feet, and they're really screaming, and because this shit hurts a lot. If you've ever been with a baton, you know. Yeah. So yeah, that happened. I mean, I was present there myself, as well. And yeah, with that, that was a really big, well, I think, moment for us where like the movement was really shook. And I mean, there was supposed to be like court cases and stuff that were brought against it, but as always, the police investigated itself and they didn't find any wrongdoing. I don't think the court case went anywhere. So yeah, we also see that, of course, there's really we cannot at all trust institutions like the police, and also even the judiciary in a supposedly free country like the Netherlands. Yeah, and with that, I'll go to the next slide and talk a bit about our current encampment. So, like, as you've seen, the history of our, like, especially the student movement here is one of, well, often very violent confrontation with the police, which obviously also takes a big toll on us, but also I think the previous slide, yeah. But also, yeah, like the media obviously also uses this to frame us as violent extremists, as they often do. And so right now, or like, so on the 2nd of June, which was 2 weeks ago on Monday, we set up a new encampment, again on the Rogers Island campus, where the first encampment was as well, that was initially violently evicted. With luckily with and we attribute this to primarily a shift in Western media narrative, but also, of course, we see, like, because the encampment is now being tolerated on campus, and we're not building barricades, and we're staying very peaceful. And this is not to say that we, of course, are not capable of doing that. But yeah, we want to, well, with the shifting media tide, and also based upon, well, the work that we have been doing, and also us showing that, well, we are able to, well, pose a real, be a real pain to our university if we want to. We really see, yeah, this peaceful campus as being enabled by all of these things. And so, yeah, we entered on negotiations on 2 weeks ago on Monday with the university. The first day went fairly good, or like, I mean, we were given concession, or like we were hearing things that were, at least compared to the negotiations before, a bit better. But then by the second day, it became very clear that, again, they were really stalling a lot. And we were told that one of the things they could do is write a letter to the Horizon Project, which I think the comrade from Berlin also mentioned earlier. Our universities, like, the ties are very similar. You can also check the Instagram where we have more details. But yeah, they said they would write a letter in 4 weeks. This would then go into an assessment in the European Parliament, and then, well, if they vote on this, maybe the university will then go and cut the ties, at least with this one project. So these are really things that didn't satisfy us. And so, yeah, like the board, even, like, they refused to call this a negotiation. They just called this talks. They were talking to us, but they didn't want to negotiate with us. And yeah, then after the negotiations broke down, we came together as a camp, and yeah, we've been having it as a democratic space. So we had a big General Assembly where we collectively decided what do we do with the camp moving forward, and we've now repurposed it as an educational space, a political space directly on campus, where students obviously come by when they go to university, but also it has been really helping us reach out to, well, the broader, especially as international students, to like local organizations, local activists, and also the just like the neighbors that live around the campus. And overall, they've been very supportive. It's very nice to see. And yeah, the encampment has been going strong for 2 weeks. We have a lot of programs. For those of you that are in Amsterdam, you can, that we got programs that were published on our Instagram. Everyone's welcome to come by and check it out. And yeah, for the near future, because the summer vacation is coming up at universities, we will probably take a break throughout the summer, and we will take a break over summer and be back on September. And it's not exactly set on when we're packing up, but when we are, which is going to be probably by the end of next week or the beginning of the week after, there's going to be a huge protest again at our university campus, at the Rogers Island campus, where we will once again reiterate our demands, make clear to the university that, and make it clear to the public, especially that, well, as we see once again, our university has, well, if we build barricades, we don't get anything, and if we comply with the ways they want us to do things, and set up peaceful encampments and talk to people and educate people on Palestine, and the genocide that is happening, which has only been getting worse and worse and worse over time. That they still don't give us anything, and it's really become clear that they are absolutely hypocritical. Our dean recently called what is finally came out and called what is happening in Israel genocidal violence, and which is even that is not enough. It is a genocide. And then he retracted that statement a day later and said, well, he wouldn't really call it that anymore. And so, yeah, no matter, we will reiterate that no matter what we do, and with all of the things that we have been doing, we don't get anything, and it's really it's insane, because we are the ones that run this institution. We pay the tuition, and yeah, we have a right to decide what our university is involved in, what kind of ties, and
Yes.
yeah, we have a right to not be involved in genocide. And with that, I'm gonna pass it on. Sorry, I hope I wasn't talking for too long.
No, it's okay. No, it's okay. I just want to say, yes, I think every European and American student can feel that last line where they kind of feel like they don't have any, like that their hands are tied. I just have to quickly go now to the next because we're kind of running out of time. So I would now welcome the UK students and if they're part. But thank you very much. Thank you very much for that.
Hello, I am Jeet. I am speaking from surprisingly sunny Britain right now, and I'll be speaking about sort of the way that our universities have played a role in colonialism, in the militarization, in NATO, but not necessarily directly through sort of research partnerships, but through sort of the more indirect investment and our struggle for divestment. So I think one thing that needs to be stated from the beginning is that universities within Britain and universities around the world have always been imperialist institutions. They have always been state actors. So, for example, the School of Oriental and African Studies, SOAS in London, was a school created to train colonial officers. Anthropology, as was mentioned by Sindala earlier, was always studied and taught in the interest of subjugating the many British colonies that it had. It was seen as a handmaiden of imperialism. This is an extremely important point to start off with, because we cannot separate the institution of the university from the organ of the state and the organ of militarism that it always has been. This has only increased as time has gone on, as the UK has sort of rejected its open colonies for neo-colonies, and especially after sort of 92, as we will discuss in the next slide, and as neoliberalization has fed itself deeply into British higher education. This is all to further NATO support and militarization, which, you know, universities claim to serve academia, knowledge production, free speech, and etc. But now, mostly because they are for-profit institutions, they go against and renege on a lot of these policies and sort of platitudes, as we will discuss as we go on. I'm also the slide manager, so I have to manage my own slides now. So in about what's it called? So in about 2010, Tony Blair, the war criminal, introduced tuition fees into this into higher education within the United Kingdom. This is already on top of the fact that the university system in this country had massively expanded after 1992 with what we call the post-92 universities. What had happened in that was that many colleges and polytechnics that were offering vocational degrees were now able to become universities and provide academic degrees. This expanded the field to about 130 to about 140 universities on an island of 64 million. So on top of this, we were already stretched quite thin, and we were oversaturated with a massive amount of universities. But then on top of this, now universities have to fund themselves through tuition fees. I'm jumping around my notes, so give me a second. This has led to the situation where we are today, where we see a massive financialization of these institutions in the forms of their investment policies, as well as in the forms of sort of exploiting students by making them sit in not fit for living and extremely expensive accommodation through extra upcharges, such as sort of fees for graduation and so on and so forth. As well as this also drives universities to chase international students, especially to set up satellite campuses in reactionary regimes like the United Arab Emirates and Malaysia, Saudi Arabia, etc. And of course, as is the topic of today's discussion, to work with companies that have the money, such as the arms trade, such as NATO. These companies include BAE Systems, which is Britain's largest weapons manufacturer, Rolls-Royce, which produces many engine components used in many parts of the world, Elbit Systems, which is, of course, Israel's largest weapons manufacturer, and so on and so forth. As we will discuss further, we will discuss in particular the London Defence Conference that happens at King's College London. But in the case of my university, which is Portsmouth, it has led to BAE Systems giving ethics lectures, literal ethics lectures to engineering students as well as politics students. They have been able to leaflet on campus in some of the only study spaces we have, and they're able to guide the learning process and what departments can do through their degree apprenticeship program, which they have in partnership with my university in what they call SPACE. They also fund a massive amount of campus development and research. So this is all stuff that the university tries to do to stay afloat within what is otherwise quite a tough time for higher education. Of course, none of this is acceptable. More broadly, universities are massively financially complicit. Research from Demilitarized Education has shown over £1 million and 653 £1 million and 653 research projects as of their time of 1 billion. I can't read. 1 billion in terms of research, even worse. We're looking at 400 and I now need to check my numbers. 456 million invested in complicit companies as researched by the British Palestine Solidarity Campaign. That is just universities investing in just complicit companies. That research was done earlier this year in April. And of course, many of... this is why you don't manage your own slides. We also have, in many cases, many more qualitative links. For example, this guy, who's a former chair counsel of King's College London, had undisclosed interest in BAE systems. At my university, we have massive links with the Navy. I am sat about 3 kilometers away from the UK's largest naval base. So we have massive links with them. Our university has also got links with other sort of naval bases around the world, other sort of military bases in this country specifically, where we give out degrees for this. So all of this to say, while universities are still technically charity organizations, they are still under the systems of neoliberalism. They are now having to compete with each other, and this means that they are fleecing their students and having to seek out these relationships. Much of our university structures are not democratic. Most financial investments happen through third-party investment managers such as CCLA, Goldman Sachs, BlackRock, and etc. And while most universities in this country do have investment policies that forbid them from investing in arms, tobacco, gambling, etc., many get around this through sort of research ties, through positive endowments that the companies give them, and so on and so forth. All of this leads to the complicity that we see today. And of course, many still have got investments in arms companies, as we have shown. Research in this country happens on either a self-funded or a semi-private basis, where in the latter case, much funding can actually be laundered through the United Kingdom Research and Innovation Organization, in which much of the STEM sciences funding, the STEM and sciences funding, happens because of arms funding like BAE Systems. Research can also be privately funded directly by these companies towards PhD and postgraduate students. That's usually much easier to untangle using what we call freedom of information requests. Universities themselves are still not democratic insofar as they're run by appointed trustee councils who tend to have massive links with NATO, the arms companies, finance capital, the British military, and the British state. They're obviously kept in line by the government to some degree, but because they have basically free reign to do whatever they want, they are still able to invest in arms companies or to have the research partnerships that we have discussed. They also have extensive ties, academic ties to sort of Zionist academic institutions. It's profitable for them, therefore it is within their fiduciary duty to pursue them. The core of this is that the universities are a business. They cannot be reasoned with, as this is because of a class interest on the university level. I will talk a little bit about our negotiations here at Portsmouth in a bit, but we must underline that these are organs of the state that cannot be reasoned with on a moral level like we could do with each other. So now we move on to sort of our case study within the London Defence Conference. This is a conference that is hosted every year at King's College London. I'll let you guess where that is. And as you can see from the slide, there are many sort of very unsavory actors, from BAE Systems to Amazon, to Santander, to Palantir, and so on. What's it called? This is a massively sponsored event that allows KCL to continue to function as the extremely wasteful institution that it is. And it is basically, every year KCL becomes this think tank to boost military spending as much as possible. All of this is with the last, The last one is happening under, I'm losing my words. The last KCL Defence Conference happened, about a year ago now. The next one is due to happen soon. And this is all in the environment of increased military spending, where Keir Starmer, our sort of prime minister and overall wet wipe, is announcing some of the largest increases in funding of the military since World War II. The objective it's within the objective interest and relations of the university as a business and organ of the British imperialist state to pursue these interests. We see the repression of anti-war activism and Palestinian activism. I can't speak anymore. The repression of anti-war activism or Palestinian advocacy is at best, we see normalization and condemnation of resistance. At worst, we see outright genocide advocacy, as we are seeing within the London Defence Conference. Imperialist warmongering with Ukraine events, of this sort of idea of we need more bullets, we need more bullets, we need bigger weapons so that we can hit sort of more targets. Within these events, universities are able to somehow raise funds and do charity events for drones for Ukraine, but for Palestine events can't even fundraise for I need to slow down. Universities allow for charity events to raise funds for drones in Ukraine, but for even the most basic of Palestine events, you must jump through many hoops to get to them for basic medical aid. This ties back into the charity bureaucracy that we see as bureaucracy gets moved out of the way for Ukraine, for NATO, but for warmongering, but not for Palestine, not for academic freedom, or for protest. These universities will use the full extent of their bureaucratic tar pits, as well as the extent of the state, to make sure that they can police their own students. So to begin to wrap up, how does this shape our struggle? So to start off, I'll talk about how the UK has struggled so far. Most of it has happened, as you can see, through these photos, through encampments, through protests, through sort of graffitis and so on. What is not pictured here is the use of our student unions. People think that, the student unions represents the will of the students, and if the will of the students is pro-Palestinian, then we can pass that through. But SUs are not a sort of student grassroots organization, but are legal requirements usually set up by the university as a separate charity. They rely on their funding from the university that they're partnered with, and this leads to them mostly becoming impotent organizations that are useless for everything except throwing a party once a week. So we do not really look at SUs with any sort of real light, though there are, of course, exceptions among the country. We've got 130 SUs. One or two have to be cool. Then we have negotiations that have been mentioned by sort of other students. In this country, negotiations have led to either a lot of success, or they have led to, in most cases, nothing at all. They use negotiations and they use these talks as a way to placate students into saying that we will look into this, instead of actually implementing concrete aims towards actually ending their complicity and ending their investments in sort of genocide and apartheid. In my case, at our university, while we were able to get some change through them, they explicitly said that they will not cut ties with BAE Systems because it is still within their interest to do so. There are other cases as well where, just coming out of Birmingham today, the university has completely cut ties with sort of the encampment group, the Birmingham Liberated Zone. But then on top of that, they also suspended their Friends of Palestine student group to completely cut ties on pro-Palestinian advocacy within Birmingham. This brings us to, how do we shape our struggle within this context? Our tactics as student organizers and all principled people around the world must be to force these institutions to the table, not to compel them with morality. As Frantz Fanon said, colonialism is not a thinking machine. These are not democratic institutions, as we have discussed, but financialized monopoly capital institutions that will only be compelled to speak when we speak their language, which is the disruption of their funding model. This all leads us to say that we need to disrupt university operations to be able to bring them to the table and to get them to end their complicity. We as students must criticize performative, co-optive, and formalistic tactics that allow for this normalizing rhetoric that we see of the Zionist entity. And we must make sure that all of our actions are not for the sake of doing it, but to serve the strategic objective at ending militarization, ending the support of NATO, and ending university complicity. Finally, we must take a revolutionary defeatist attitude. That is to say, especially in an environment as oversaturated as the British higher education system. That is to say that if universities cannot survive without taking blood money, then they should not be able to live. Within the context of higher education in Britain, we are again deeply oversaturated, and we will see many universities collapse without outside funding. We're already seeing this process happen where large universities like Cardiff, in one of our nation's capitals, is already having to cut massive amounts of humanities courses. We are already in this death spiral, and no matter how many mitigating factors these universities or this government will take, we will not be able to get out of it. We must understand that academia is a critical juncture when it comes to research and recruitment for arms. That we know that arms companies rely on universities for research, for the recruitment of new engineers, for new students, for more sort of moral posturing. So by beginning to isolate them, we're on a step of removing them, not only from the university, but from the world. And I think that is me. Thanks all.
Thank you very much, Sheet, for the input. And thank you for all the speakers today. You have had some great, amazing inputs and something like new to learn for us. But the question still remains on how do we resist though? And for that, I just have to quickly go on to the next slide. Jeet, if you could do that for me, my phone doesn't work anymore. Perfect. Exactly. For a united anti-fascist, anti-war movement, we have to unite against war and against NATO. To resist militarism is to resist imperialism by supporting national liberation movements all over the world. And to resist militarism and NATO is to support militant movements that fight against austerity measures here and abroad. And to resist militarism is to counter war propaganda in our everyday life. And with that being said, I just want to give in some thoughts of mine. I know we don't have that much time. I'm just going to wrap up really quickly. NATO is right now in the most unstable situation as they have probably ever been. They are divided on so many issues. They do not have a clear stance on the Ukraine conflict regarding weapons delivery and or peace talks with Russia. They do not know how to deal with their, let's call them child Israel, and how far their critics should go, or even if they should like sanction them or completely ignore it. And already some European and NATO members declared that they would pass by international law and would not arrest Benjamin Netanyahu if he would come to their country. This obviously shows the full hypocrisy on their question on morality and their bandits for international law. They also do not care anymore about the climate crisis. Military war machines are the worst sinners in the climate context. And right now we see some kind of hope, because right now we see protests and people's uprising everywhere in the world. Social media has actually helped us to connect and see other people's struggles and getting in touch with other comrades striving for the same goal. We have to use this momentum. The momentum is on our side. They have been fighting. They're getting fighted on every corner from within. If it's politics, if it's climate change, if it's their own alliances. We have to use this momentum and join the protests. To join your networks, how you can help, how you can resist. Join your networks. Be active in them. Get in touch with other networks, other people. And if you are a student, take your presidium, take your own institutions to accountability, and do not let your own institutions become war machines for other countries. So I just want to remind you again the People's Summit, which is happening on the 21st of June, and the protest action following the day afterwards. If you could go to the last slide. Yes, exactly. We have some preparation here. There is a QR code for the summit registration, a link to the Instagram, and if you are a student and you don't really know how to engage in the complicity research, you can maybe start off with our link here. This is a proper link where it shows from, I think, Germany, Netherlands, Belgium, and I think some other countries more, to show if your university is already complicit, and you can check it there as well. So to wrap it up, thank you very much for everyone who attended today. Thank you very much for the speakers. Thank you all for that. You've been amazing, and I'm glad that we made it through. And yes, Q&A. I know we don't have that much time, but if you have some questions that are lying in your heart, please ask them now. You can just throw them into the chat, and if one of us feels confident enough, we will answer them. So yes, I'm gonna just check if there are some. You're welcome, guys. You're welcome. I'm sorry. Yes, and if you want to get in touch with any specific student organization, you can just, for example, ask Resist NATO on Instagram for specific contacts on the students in Belgium, Netherlands, or Berlin. You can just ask them, and they can connect you to the other student groups as well. Yes, let's get in touch. Let's get in touch, and I want everyone here to be there next week. So if you haven't booked your flight or your train tickets, it's about time. So I don't see any questions right now. There's nothing one. There's one question on how has violent repression impacted student movements who experienced them? If I may answer it, they amplified the movement. If there would have not been that much repression, that much beating, that much disgusting media coverage, I don't think the movement would have been as loud as it would have been like right now, because the repression does also show on where your own state is standing and what their own maybe secret intentions are and what they're trying to protect. This raises more people and their anger as well. If someone wants to answer that as well, please do. I'm just gonna look through the chat again.
I'm just gonna really quickly, add on and confirm that what Hakan said, we've made the same experience that generally police repression does lead to a lot of solidarity and big reaction among the student movement and the more general pro-Palestine movement, and also the biggest protests that we've had on campus were always following violent evictions of encampments.
Yes, and what I have noticed is if there was a protest demonstration with much police violence here in Berlin, there was almost every time always a counter demonstration the following day just regarding the police. So one or few beating ups raised dozens of more protests. So in that sense, yes, I would confirm that as well. There's a question saying, what strategy could be effective for universities that use placketing strategies rather than violent ones? Sorry. If any speaker feels confident enough, otherwise I will do it.
I mean, I can give it a go. So, and again, everybody feel free to add your input. So this is the experience that we had in Portsmouth, where we had a placating strategy of this university. We had a lot of fun stories from our sort of vice chancellor of the university, the highest person who runs this university, coming and giving us soup. They were very much not violent. And I think the way that we get around that is by forcing their hand and making them violent. Every single institution has a breaking point. And I think what happened here in Portsmouth is that we just didn't hit it. With the ability to be more visible, to be more organized, to be out there almost often, and again, going back to what I was saying, disrupting their funding model, that is when the universities will begin to either start listening or they will start repressing. Either way, those lead to both of which can strengthen the movement if leveraged correctly, as has been shown by comrades such as in SOAS. SOAS has had an encampment for over a year now, and every time that they were forced to move, they were able to gain strength for their movement because of that. And it is only because of the consistent, constant organizing that basically made sure that they were a disruptive influence on campus. And that is what brought universities to the table. I'm sure that that experience can be echoed by our comrades over in Europe as well, but I won't speak for them as much on that. So I hope that answers the question.
There was also one interesting input from Zindala. Many times these institutions pretend to have negotiation talks to keep you on the line, to keep you slow down. They are very scared of these lecture hall occupations, for example. They don't want their universities to be going around the media every time. So regarding that, there is also that side of the hypocrisy coin. So if they want to talk, it doesn't always mean they're open. Like you have to first of them hear them out, and yeah. Let's see. Okay. I think there are no questions left. Yes, we have the links there already. You can take a picture from that site if you want to join it later on or have your own research. There are the links on the chat. And with that being said, if no one else has any questions or anything to say, I will again say thank you. Thank you very much. First and foremost to the speakers who prepared the presentation, the information, and keep on going this way. It's been almost now 2 years now almost. We're still here. And yes, there has been more attention to the struggles and more attention, but we still have to keep striving, not forgetting enough, and connecting the dots of each and every struggle as well. And with that being said, thank you very much for being here. I would now close the topic, and yes, I would see you next week now. Bye-bye. Thank you. Thank you very much, man.